Poor security in Australian ports may be letting convicted criminals and potential terrorists work on the docks.
A new report has revealed major problems with the country's maritime security, including concerns for the existing protocol and risks of terrorism and organised crime. It claims the current system doesn't detect or act on a range of offences that are known to have links with terrorist activity.
For more on this story, we're joined by the Shadow Justice and Customs Minister, Susan Lee. Susan Lee, good morning. Why does this terrorist threat exist on our docks, in your opinion?
Good morning. It is clear that there are links between organised crime and terrorist activity. There are things that criminals do, including money laundering, larceny, theft, and other types of violent crimes that are associated with terrorism. So what this report that the government has now received is telling them is that the system for issuing maritime ID cards is not good enough, is not working, and poses a security risk. So the information has been provided to government. It's now incumbent on the government to act on it.
Why hasn't the security been better, say, post September 11, when all this issue was very dramatically raised? That's now 8 years ago. Why can't we expect a better system?
Well, these maritime security ID cards were introduced post September 11 and they related to terrorist types of offences. But the system you introduce is never the system you end up with, and along the way plenty of advice has been received in the last couple of years to government, including confidential information from the Australian Crime Commission demonstrating the infiltration of organised crime on our docks. So we now need to upgrade the security system urgently, and what we are saying is that we need a complete overhaul starting today. The government has had information, not just this report, but Senate estimates, media inquiry from up to 2 years ago. They do need to act.
What about reports that something like 41% were denied one of these ID cards?
41 individuals were denied an ID card out of...
41 individuals. It was 20% had a criminal record and 41 were denied these cards.
And 12,000 received cards. So it's a very small knockback rate, and that's because the criteria under which these cards are issued is extremely narrow. A certain type of terrorism offence only. But there are lots of other really bad activities that could have gone on in a person's past, including convictions for reasonably serious offences, and they won't rule you out of getting an ID card, and that's the problem. When we look at that fact, and we also know that where there are organised crime links, there is an opportunity for terrorism, then we have a problem, and that's what this report identifies. We've heard it from the experts, now we need to get on and do something about it.
Mind you, for most of the time post-September 11, it's been the coalition that was in power. Why wasn't anything done about this before?
The coalition made tough decisions on national security. About that, there is no question. The coalition introduced this system, and plenty of other reports that followed it have indicated to the present government that action needs to be taken. In the last couple of years, we've really seen this issue highlighted, and I particularly draw your attention to the Australian Crime Commission advice to the Home Affairs Minister in June, and the coalition has been calling for the last 18 months for ramping up maritime security, port security, and the issue of these ID cards. Yes. All of the information is there.
It's fine to say that now, but why wasn't the system devised by the coalition in the first place better?
Well, governments act on the advice they receive at the time. There was nothing in place before this card was introduced. Terrorism was a threat. As the threat assessment varies and the situation changes over time, and we look at exactly the character of the individuals who are working on our docks, and we have more evidence about the issuing of these cards, the bodies that issue them, and the types of convictions that people who have them hold, then certainly there is time to make changes. That time is now. The Rudd Labor government is in power, and they are the ones who are bound to act.
So what would you recommend in terms of toughening up the screening process?
Well, what this report that Minister Albanese has received, it gives some ideas about a new system under which criminal convictions could be assessed, and certainly more convictions could rule a person out. of holding an ID card. There is no use of currently available intelligence in assessing a person's risk. That needs to be brought in. What I'm seeing is rather a quick tick and flick exercise in terms of a private provider sometimes issuing this card, quite removed from the intelligence processes that some of our law enforcement could be inputting into the process. And so I think we may need to bring this back inside the Department of Transport and have a closer relationship with law enforcement in assessing a person's risk. It's something we shouldn't be taking any chances on.
More broadly, tell us, in your view and from the reports that you've seen, how organised is the organised crime in the maritime sector? What scale is it on, and what specifically are they targeting?
Well, I can't talk about individual instances of organised crime, but parliamentary committees over the last 18 months and Senate estimates have received evidence that the problem exists. But if I can just use one example, Australia's use of cocaine is escalating at unforeseen levels. Every gram of cocaine is imported through our docks or through our airports. It's not manufactured in Australia, so it's all coming into this country illegally. That importation is being managed by organised crime. They're the ones who have infiltrated the system and are actually allowing this or making this happen. Narcotics. The use of narcotics in Australia is a serious concern, and the amount of smuggled contraband such as cigarettes, which aren't detected because when they're sold here they're not necessarily identified as having been imported excise free. All of these things are coming in our containers. The government has cut its container inspections and now it's being lax on the workers at our ports.
Susan Lee, appreciate your time. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.